Hello everyone, this is Tonelli. Welcome to a new episode of One Chord a Week. Today is time to cover the final triad. We did the major, minor and diminished. And what we're missing now is maybe the strangest of all, but still a very beautiful sound and very useful to build other chords upon. So let's get started. The sound of the augmented chord is a bit strange, and because of its sound you might think you'll only find it in, so to speak, sophisticated kinds of music. You might expect it in jazz, you might expect it in experimental classical music, and of course you'll find it there, but it's surprisingly common in very straightforward kinds of music as well. Chuck Berry used it in his music, the Beatles use it, you'll see it in radio pop all the time. And also you'll find it, of course, in fusion and more experimental things, but it's very ubiquitous. You'll find it in music soundtracks and documentaries. Once you tune your ear to it, you'll hear it pretty much everywhere. And the augmented chord also has a few peculiarities about it that make it very interesting from the point of view of just the architecture of the chord and the mathematical design of the chord. So we're going to look at those very soon. And let's begin with the formula so we know how it's built and we understand the relationship between its notes. The augmented chord, just like the major, minor and diminished chords, is a triad. A triad means it's made up of only three notes. There's a root, a third and a fifth. Its closest relative is certainly the major chord. Here's a link in case you missed it, if you want to watch it later. But the major chord was root, major third and perfect fifth. The very simple sound of major. Now, if we want to make it augmented, it's pretty much the same thing. We have a root in C, as always in these videos. We talk in the key of C. Then we go to the major third, which is E. The major third is two whole steps above the root. And then to make it augmented, we take the perfect fifth, which is G, and raise it a half step. So you'll find the augmented fifth one half step above or one fret above the perfect fifth. And this is the sound. So we have root, major third, augmented fifth. I find it a beautiful sound, and let's talk about that in the next section. Beautiful, but also a bit strange. And the first reason you'll find it strange is that this chord does not occur as a diatonic chord. So when you harmonize a major scale or a minor scale or any of the diatonic modes, which are certainly the most common, you find major, minor and diminished triads, but never an augmented triad. To find augmented triads, you have to get into stranger scales like the harmonic minor and other scales, but it's not present in the very basic, not meant in a bad way, but basic in the sense that they're the basis for pretty much all melody and harmony, the major scale and the modes. You won't find it there. So just that by itself makes it a bit strange because you're not used to hearing it. When you hear a scale, your ear organizes these sounds subconsciously and recognizes when a chord is within the scale or not. You know that if you played a song in C major and you hit the wrong chord, you'll notice it, all right? And so the augmented triad sounds a bit alien. So that's the first reason, because it's not available as a diatonic triad. The other reason that it sounds a bit strange is that the augmented fifth is a tense interval, all right? So this chord doesn't quite stand on its own. It kind of needs something. It needs a bit of a resolution. And so that places it a little bit more in the dominant function. The dominant wants to go to one. Remember, we did the seventh chord, the 7/4 chords. Those chords want to resolve. And it's kind of happening here with this chord. So I'm going to show you two ways that you can use it with that kind of resolution centered idea. Okay, so the first one is a very simple one you'll find very useful in your writing. It's often used as the one chord between the one chord and the subdominants. So made simple. The one chord, of course, in C is C. And the subdominants are the D minor and the F. Let's take the F as a subdominant. So I could have a progression that goes from 1, which is C, to 4, which is F. Okay, so you can use the one augmented as a bridge between these two chords. So I would play C major, then go to the same note, C, but make it augmented, And you can hear a tension build up, and you can hear how I can resolve it to F. I could resolve it to D as well because it's the same thing. The reason it works is that I have a G in the chord C. That G becomes sharp when I make it augmented, that one. So C augmented with the G sharp, and then F or D minor with an A. So what your ear hears is the G in C major, the C sharp in G augmented, and the A in the subdominant. Listen to, look for this, right? All right, so it's a beautiful sound, very common, and you can use it anywhere you want. Okay, just make sure it's the one augmented, and the 4. Another way to use the augmented chord as a dominant function is to place it right where we expect a dominant, which is the 5th degree. So instead of playing a 5-1 resolution from G to C, you can play the augmented G to the C. All right, so let's make a quick example by using a standard 2-5-1, so D minor, G 7th, which is the dominant, to C. Okay, 2-5-1. We're going to replace the G dominant with a G augmented. Okay, so you'll hear again a very clear resolution. We have a D minor 7th. Now instead of the G 7th, I'm going to play a G augmented. You hear that, and now listen how it resolves to the 1, which is C. It's beautiful, it's strange, it's a bit different, but it sounds great. There's one more thing we should discuss about the augmented chord, and that is that it's a symmetrical chord. It's very apparent if we spread it out over a single string. So we have the C, the E, the G sharp, and then again the C, right? And look at it. We have from C to E, it's 2 whole steps or 4 frets. From E to G sharp, it's 2 whole steps or 4 frets. And from the G sharp to the C, again, is the same distance. Which means that all of these notes could be considered as the root of the chord. Let me just demonstrate it very quickly. If I play C augmented, I'm playing C, E, and G sharp. If I play it in first inversion, which means I start on the 3rd, and I play an E augmented, I'm playing E, G sharp, and C. They're the same notes. And if I go to the second inversion, starting on the 5th, which is G sharp, I end up with G sharp, C, and E. You see, so they're all the same chord. Even if I start on a different note of the chord, it's still the same chord. It's pretty rare. There are not many chords like this. And so another consequence of this is that really there are only 4 augmented triads. There's the C triad, the one that starts on C sharp or D flat, the one on D, the one on E flat or D sharp. But then as soon as I hit E again, I'm playing the same chord as I was playing here, and so on. So there's only 1, 2, 3, 4. After this point, they all repeat. Okay, so it's a pretty interesting thing, and it certainly contributes to the fact that it's used in a certain way. All right, so let me show you 3 fingerings for this chord so that you can implement it into your playing as soon as possible. The first one is the one we saw earlier, and it's like this. We have a root on the 3rd fret of the 5th string. We have the major 3rd on the 2nd fret of the 4th string, which is E. And then we have the G sharp or augmented 5th on the 1st fret of the 3rd string. And then we'll add the root again, just for completeness. Okay, so C, E, G sharp, C. The next position is a bit higher up the neck, and it starts with the 5th now. So we have a G sharp on the 6th fret of the 4th string. And then we go on the 5th fret, C and E. And then maybe with a bit of stretch, we play a C again on the 8th fret of the 1st string. Very cool sound. And for the final position, let's move up a little bit more on the fretboard. We go to the 10th fret with a C. 9th fret, we have an E and a G sharp. And then we double the root again to C on the 8th fret of the 1st string. And there you go. This should get you started. The scales of the augmented chord are a bit strange, and there's not too many of them actually out there, but you'll be able to find some, maybe investigate the harmonic minor, you know, and so on. But today I'm going to show you two that are really strange and so interesting and fascinating architecturally and kind of mathematically, the formula they follow. And the first one is called the whole-tone scale. Whole-tone scale means, very simply, that you play a sequence of whole steps. So I play whole step, whole step, whole step, whole step, whole step, whole step. In the key of C would be C, D, E, F sharp, G sharp, A sharp, and C. You can call the sharps flats if you want. And it sounds like this. It's really cool. You can learn in a few positions, and it's a very interesting scale. I use it actually quite often. The next scale is even stranger and even more fascinating, and it's called the augmented scale. It's very simple. The augmented scale uses the same note as the chord, so C, E, and G sharp, but it also adds a leading tone before each of these notes. That means adding a note right before it, a half step before it. So we have B before the C, D sharp before the E, and a G before the G sharp. So we have, this is the scale, and it's very cool. It sounds, to me it sounds very interesting. And another thing really quickly of how you can visualize it on the fretboard, let's take a simple triad of the augmented chord. So we have 10, 9, 9, C, E, G sharp. Because the scale, the augmented scale, is made up of the same notes of the chord plus a leading tone for each of them, it's the same thing as playing a chord and also the chord a half step before it. This is the sound of the augmented scale. So you see, it's very easy to visualize on the fretboard. It's just an augmented chord plus all the notes right before it. And it works everywhere. So if you have this chord here, 3, 2, 1, 1, that we played up here, here's how you find the other notes of the scale. And you can combine them or play them a bit more randomly. And it's a beautiful sounding scale. It's called the augmented scale. All right, congratulations, you made it through the video. I know this is a bit more complex than some other chords, but it's certainly very interesting, and I think you'll find it very useful in your compositions and improvisations even. So as always, if you enjoyed the video, if I may ask you to please consider subscribing, liking, commenting, and maybe you could share this video with your friends. I don't know if you are in a community that deals with guitar, maybe you could suggest it, not just to help me grow the channel, but also maybe to assist those who are in need for a certain degree of education with the guitar and music. All right, either way, I will see you next week with a new chord. And if you want to join us on Saturdays, we do a live stream every Saturday, 6:30 Central European Time, called Music Talk Live. I'll see you very soon. Have a great week ahead of you, and play a lot of guitar. Bye-bye.